In 1974 BC, before children, Linda and I had a delightful holiday driving to Austria. In her teens, Linda had developed friendships with two Austrian girls, both called Eva, who lived near Salzburg. They'd visited each other's homes a few times, and now all three girls were married, and it was the first time that Linda had been back to Austria for 10 years. We stayed at the home of Eva and Peter Vorgotter. With their children Doris and Michael, they introduced us to their hometown of Saarfelden and the beautiful surrounding countryside. It had been such a friendly holiday that 11 years later, in 1985, when our own children were old enough, we decided to make a return trip. Some changes were inevitable. After all, we were all getting a little older. But the everlasting beauty of the countryside and the warm welcome of our friends made the excitement of the journey as strong as before. In 1974, Linda and I had camped in an old borrowed tent. We still camped on our second trip, but our aging bones preferred the additional comfort of a caravan. We also picked a different route, partly to see pastures new and partly dictated by the need to find the easiest towing road. But our destination remained the same: Salzburg, Austria. On both trips we headed south along the banks of the River Rhine. The valley is a living artery for this part of the world. River traffic provides vital industrial transport for hundreds of miles, and the main road and rail routes also follow the gentle incline as the valley climbs into the heartland of southern Europe. In 1974, our route continued south into Switzerland, a land of lakes and mountains with cows grazing peacefully on lush alpine grass. In the land of chocolate and cuckoo clocks, the banks of Lake Lucerne tempted us to take a relaxing pause in our long journey. Turning eastwards, we headed towards Liechtenstein in Austria. Naturally, in areas like this, mountains form the major barriers to any travelling. If you can't go around them, you must either go through them or over them. Unfortunately, this road into Austria leads steeply up the Arlberg Pass, and there was no way that I wished to pull a caravan up that hill. So for our next trip, we took an easier route across southern Germany. We followed what the Germans call the Romantische Strasse, the Romantic Road, which leads gently into Bavaria and the foothills of the Tyrolean Mountains. Along this route are some equally romantic towns where time seems to have stood still. Here in Dinkelsbühl, Stephen and Julie were particularly fascinated to find wooden nutcrackers in the form of soldiers, just like the ones in Tchaikovsky's ballet. The Romantic Road ends at Füssen, on the edge of the Bavarian Tyrol. Here we found that the local flying club was having an open day, and it seemed a most exciting way of getting up among the mountain peaks. This was the first time that the children had ever flown, and as a slightly dazed Stephen said afterwards, it was the most wonderful experience of his whole life. Soon we found ourselves flying high above our lakeside campsite. Many years earlier, King Ludwig II had also considered this a suitable place to stay, and had built his own fairy tale castle at Neuschwanstein. Having seen the mountains from the air, we were determined to eventually set our feet firmly on top of one. When we reached the summit of Tagelberg, we decided not to return by cable car, but to make our own way down. However, we decided not to follow the example of this gentleman. The path we took had been described to us by one of the locals as an easy stroll. Our legs were still stiff 2 days later, and we decided that the phrase "an easy stroll" was ein deutscher Witz, a German joke. Mountains always produce beautiful landscapes, but countries are made of people, and there is nothing nicer than to pause momentarily to watch the local characters pass by. On both our journeys, our final destination was Salzburg, home of Mozart, home of the Sound of Music, and home of Auntie Catty, Eva Vorgotter's mother, who had first shown Linda and I around in 1974. The sight of Salzburg's fountains reminded us of the Hellbrunn water gardens. Linda had first been fascinated by them in the 1950s. I'd been taken there in the 70s, and now it was our children's turn. The Prince Bishop who built these beautiful palace gardens in 1613 had a wicked sense of humour. On warm days he would invite his guests to picnic at this stone table, and then catch them unawares with a blast of cold water from the seats. Only his own top seat remained dry. Water power is used throughout the gardens to animate model tableaux, such as this one of a medieval town. The spirit of the practical joking bishop still lurks around the garden, and even today the visitor is likely to get a surprise soaking from concealed fountains. The beautiful city of Salzburg, with the Hohensalzburg castle towering over the river, might have been our destination. But ultimately what drew us there were long-lasting friendships. On our second trip we stayed with the other Eva and her husband Gero Musleiner. Together with Eva's mother Mutti and their sons Arno and Harold, they made our long journey well worthwhile and ensured that our future return would be inevitable.